Labadiena visiems.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We begin the press conference of the 26th of May to discuss the conference on gender equality and gender-based violence. We have here in this conference Ambassador of Sweden and Lithuania, Madam Inger Buxton, Monica Navickienė, Minister of Social Security and Labor, Evan Inger from the European Parliament, Natalia Karbovska, European Institute for Gender Equality, Kalin Scheller, Milana Pelinikaitė Sotirovic from the Women's Home. You can hear your interpret in the headphones. Now I would like to give the floor to the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Sweden to Lithuania, Inger Buxton.
Thank you so much and warmly welcome. Yes, it's a great honor for us as the Swedish EU presidency to be able to organize this conference here today. And a great thank you to Lithuanian Parliament, Seimas, for hosting us here today. Also that we're doing this conference together with the European Institute for Gender Equality, which is based in Vilnius, which was a great opportunity to do this, but also for the Center on Equality Advancement to being a host with us for this event. And also, of course, to Minister Navickienė, who are working very closely with on this issue and for being part of today's conference. And we decided to organize this conference as Sweden sees that gender equality is an important issue to keep on the agenda, and also the opportunity to do this in the framework of the EU Eastern Partnership. Sweden was one of the initiators of this initiative 15 years ago. In fact, today is exactly 15 years since the Polish and the Swedish foreign ministers put forward a proposal of the Eastern Partnership in the European Council, and we have seen how this development, how the partnership has developed over the years, and also the fact that some of these countries are now on their way into the European Union. We have developed closer partnerships, and also to highlighting how we can work more effectively together on gender equality and violence against women. And I think we have had a very good exchange today, hearing witnesses of those working on the ground, both in the Eastern Partnership countries and in EU member states, on the issue of violence against women, which still is a big problem. We have about 1 in 3 women that experience violence against themselves and in terms of physical and sexual violence. And this is an enormous problem. It's about human rights, but it's also actually an economic cost to our societies. So this is why this issue needs to be very high on the political agenda. Thank you.
Dėkojame. Maloniai kviečiame pasisakyti socialinės apsaugos.
Thank you. Now I would like to give the floor to Monica Navickienė, Minister of Social Security and Labor of Lithuania. Thank you. I want to thank the Ambassador of Sweden, Inger Buxton, for your leadership and for putting this item on the agenda and reminding that these topics are very important. I also thank all the international experts, the IGA, and all other experts who participated in today's conference to exchange experience and expertise, and also to look for some main points, some joint points that we can work on. I think that the topic on gender equality and violence against women cannot be separated from the geopolitical context. We know that Russian troops use sexual violence against women as a weapon of war. We know that in the face of this reality, the outcomes of the war in Ukraine and the Eastern Partnership policy as a platform is becoming even more important. And our attempt to strengthen Eastern Partnership is very important. Violence against women is one of the most acute problems in our society, and this can be prevented only by the concerted effort when we improve our interinstitutional cooperation both at national level and by providing more services and ensuring prevention. Prevention should be focused even more than some resolution efforts. The new amended law on domestic violence in Lithuania that comes into force since the 1st of July 2023 is very welcoming, but much needs to be done. The number of women suffering all forms of violence is great. It is much bigger than that recorded. Therefore, we need to promote the solution of this problem. I believe that today's conference helped us to discuss the topic and to see more opportunities to improve this problem, to tackle this issue altogether, and to address the issue of war and using of sexual violence as a weapon of war. We need to prevent this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we would like to give the floor to Ms. Lyčių, MEP.
We're thanking the Swedish embassy for taking this leadership on fighting this heinous violence that gender-based violence is constituting. And I also want to thank Lithuania through the minister also for being a part of hosting this important event, as well as, of course, our own European institution, IGF, for being an institution that is putting these issues in the core of the decision-making also in all the different EU institutions. Women and girls' rights needs to start being recognized as human rights, because when they are recognized as human rights, then I also see in front of me that the whole society will act, because women and girls' rights are actually human rights. People need to just start waking up. And when I then say people, I just, of course, means decision makers. In the European Parliament, an important step was taken just a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago approximately. We voted in favor of the European Union ratifying the exclusive competence of Istanbul Convention. This is a very important and big step for us in the European Parliament, as well as we look forward to adoption of the gender equality or the directive on violence against women and domestic violence that is being discussed on a European level, not at least within the European Parliament right now. And that directive will mean that we go from words to actions on ensuring women and girls' freedom. Because gender equality is not any other issue. It concerns half of the population. And the half of the population cannot continue being violated against and being deprived their right to even being part of decision-making many times. It's not a coincidence that we see a lack of women in decision-making places in many parts of the European Union, as well as beyond our own borders. So I look forward to the continued cooperation and thanks again for this very important conference.
Dėkojame. Maloniai kviečiame pasisakyti.
Thank you very much. And we would now kindly like to give the floor to Ms. Natalia Karbovska, representative of a Ukrainian women's NGO.
I was actually thinking what to say today at the press conference, and I decided that the best would be if I speak about the messages that I got here during as a result of my participation in the conference these 2 days, and the messages that I'm bringing back home tomorrow morning. I'm coming back to Kyiv. So the messages are the following. First of all, about the importance of cooperation and dialogues within Eastern Partnership countries and also between the Eastern Partnership countries and EU member states. We often think that, we are so different countries in the region. Some countries are in war, some countries are in peace, some countries are in relative peace. But I learned today and also yesterday during our conversation at Riga that we share so much in common. And there is definitely a need for us to talk more to each other, to cooperate with each other. Another important message that I heard today is about the need to change the systems. Because gender equality is not only about providing services to those who are survivors, those women or men who are suffering from inequalities. It's about changing the systems and the role of women's rights organizations in this policy and advocacy work. And also about the importance of placing the survivors in the center of this work. Those who the policies are developed are targeting, they should be in the center of their decision making. They should have a word. They should be at the tables where decisions on policies are made. This is also an important message that that I'm bringing back home. And often we also think that in our context, for example, we are talking about women in Ukraine mostly as about victims in this war, about survivors. And often looking at them only as victims prevent us from looking at them as those who know the solutions. We just need to give them the microphones. We need to give them the voice and chairs at the tables where they can talk about their solutions. And I do think that this is relevant not only for my country, for Ukraine, but also for the whole region. The message that resonated a lot with me was about the fact that keeping human rights, and I think the colleague from Estonia, you said this, that keeping human rights in the focus is a difficult task in the region. This resonates very much with the situation in my own country, but I do think we have some positive developments like Istanbul Convention, we spoke about it today. Ukraine ratified the Istanbul Convention and we consider it a big achievement also. The convention was ratified in the European Union, but the next big task which is ahead is of course to make the new policies work, because it's, and one thing is to have the policy on paper, but to make it work, it is another very challenging task. And for this, we do need cooperation. And the last but not least, the message that I am bringing back home is, I think this is a quote of a Ukrainian participant of the conference who was speaking today, young woman lawyer from URFEM, Association of Women Lawyers. She said that cooperation is about action. And we often think that we are doing a lot already, each of us, to change the situation for women in our own countries, to change the situation for women in our region, to protect human rights in the region, to build democracies, to protect democracy in the region. But I urge you, I encourage you to think about what you can do more, because there is definitely a need to be more, to do more. Again, to build the region which is democratic, to build the region which is supportive of human rights and women's rights in particular, and the region which is really gender inclusive or inclusive in more general. There is a lot of work for us ahead to build such a region, but I think this is doable, this is possible. Thank you.
Dėkojame. Kviečiame
Thank you very much. And we would now like to give the floor to the director of the European Institute for Gender Equality, Ms. Caroline Schelle.
Yes, thank you so much. And first of all, I would like Swedish ambassador and Seimas for organizing this conference, very important. What I would like to add to what I have already said in the conference is that EIGE is an institute that collects data and information, which is very relevant because it's the basis of policy making, of legislation and projects. But what we should never forget is that behind those data, there are stories of real life people. And I think that it was so important to hear the panel today, because that's exactly what I want to keep stressing. Our information is important, but we can only really understand what it is about if we hear these testimonies of brave people, of brave women and men who dare to speak up. And you know, the Istanbul Convention, it was mentioned several times today, the same for the Directive on Violence Against Women and Domestic Violence, important pieces of legislation. And what we should really, when they are being negotiated, what negotiators should realize, it saves women's lives. Because on an everyday basis, in the European Union, women and girls are dying because they are victims of violence, domestic violence. Imagine, in the place where you should feel safest, every day, women and girls in EU come home full of fear because they don't know what they can expect at home. Our sister agency, the Fundamental Rights Agency in Vienna, undertook a big first survey on violence against women in 2014, where they interviewed women. They asked women if they were victims of violence, and together with Eurostat, EIGE and FRA are now doing this second survey, and we will publish the outcomes in the second half of 2024. I'm not very, let's say, positive about the outcomes, but it's important that we do this type of surveys because we interview women directly to learn from them if and how they are experiencing violence. Maybe a few words about something that was mentioned several times in the conference as well. It is the economic costs of domestic violence and violence against women. You know, these figures are amazing. We have estimated that violence against women, it costs the European Union 366 billion euros on a yearly basis. And I'm sometimes really wondering if, let's say, if policymakers, if politicians do see these figures, because they're amazing. And in times of crisis, when member states try to recover from, let's say, economic crisis, I think these figures are very important. And I hope that they do realize that it's not only, let's say, Green Deal issues or artificial intelligence, but as was said in the conference, also gender equality is such an important topic to focus on in the recovery and resilience of the European Union. Maybe one last word again about the personal stories. What I realized as a mother of a grown-up daughter, that looking at the data, she could actually become a victim of domestic violence. Every woman I love in my personal life, if I look at the data, could become a victim of domestic violence or violence. And for me, it's a horrible thought. Let's not forget it's about me, it's about you, it's about all of us. It's not an abstract topic, but it hits many people in their daily lives. EIGE will continue gathering data and information. We will provide it to all important stakeholders. And I really hope that it's the basis of a lot of important decisions now and in the future. Thank you.
Dėkojame. Kviečiame pasisakyti.
Thank you. And now give the floor to the expert of the Gender Equality Institute.
Word in this press conference. First of all, I would like to thank to Swedish Embassy for the initiative to keep gender equality and gender-based violence on the policy agenda, because it's very much needed, and it should not be thought that we somehow resolving this issue, and this is not the matter anymore. This is always matter, and I think that continuing speaking about this in any forums, it is for the benefit of the society, for the benefit of all the persons in the society, in the world. So thank you very much for this. And of course for all who co-organized the conference. I would like to bring the voices of women's NGOs who participated in this 2 days forum. We had discussions yesterday, we had discussions today, and I could see that there are so many similarities that we are going through in our societies. First of all, there is lack of legislation, and if it is legislation, it is lack of implementation. So this implementation matters, and why we have to talk all the time that we need legislation, policies, and political will. Political will is almost absent in many, many countries, including EU accession countries, East Partnership countries, but also EU member states countries. The political leadership is lacking. And more important, what it was mentioned today, that we need not only just like political will, but gender responsive political will, where whoever is on the policy top level, I mean, woman or man, taking decisions, they should be feminist, or they should be gender responsive leaders to think about all people in the society without somehow labeling it is important issue or not important issue. Gender matters all the time. We need budgets. We cannot implement any policies, any laws, any our visions, strategies in the government if we don't have budget. And budget is needed for measures which will be effective. Budget needs for the services, budget needs for the prevention, and budget needs for people who work on the ground to implement those policies as well, because not only governments are implementing policies, all the society is involved in the implementation of the measures. So budgets are needed. We need change of the mindset, because stereotypes, prejudices about gender are so widely spread, and we have this continuous discourses on the traditional values and what kind of tradition we're talking. I mean, it's still not clear. Are we going backwards? Are we going, I don't know, somewhere which is slavery or oppression is matters, or are we going forward where equality matters? So I think that this change of the mind through various prevention methods, which takes from very early age till very late age, should be always on the policy agenda. And yes, we are facing resistances, anti-gender resistances, which are so widespread and so mobilized, unfortunately, that we should not forget about the gender equality agenda, that it is in our everyday understanding and everyday life work. So my last point is, I like it very much yesterday how we summarized what we would like to bring to the governments of all our society. There are several steps. First of all, all politicians, governments should cooperate with the civil society organizations, gender equality organizations. And this is not only to invite them to the table and to discuss and to put the tick that, okay, we invited, but just to listen to them, to recognize what they're saying, and to act. So these are 3 points that I would like to deliver to all governments in European Union, accession countries, and also East European Partnership countries. Thank you very much.
Dėkojame. Ar turime klausimų?
Thank you. Do we have any questions?
to independence Lithuania. I listened 6 explanations, but I still do not have a clear answer. How so-called gender equality is linked with fight against violence against women? Is it impossible to fight against violence against women without gender equality? I do not have an answer. How these two issues are connected?
I think there is very good data that would underscore the connection. We have all countries have agreed on the international human rights, the rights for all people, for life, for their full rights to be respected. And we know that a more gender equal society is stronger on human rights, and domestic violence is about human rights. So I think there is a very, very clear link. And we have also seen that when countries have more equal society being represented at political level or being wider in society, where women and men participate on equal basis, where all voices are heard about different experiences, you are also increased the chances to learn. I think we heard in this panel very clear, vivid examples of the fact that we need to listen to those who are victims, and in a more equal society, more voices can be heard and solutions discussed, and that also, I think, prove, if we look at countries where you have a high level of equality, for example, in parliaments, in governments, that it also means that you will go forward in terms of addressing problems like domestic violence and violence against women. Of course, there are also other human rights aspects that needs to be addressed. Also, gender representation, women representations, for example, at the highest decision-making level, is another such issue. Thank you.
I can also... Oh, go ahead, Vilan. Okay. I can give a very, thank you for the question. I can give a very simple answer, I think. My organization, Ukrainian Women's Fund, we are supporting many organizations in Ukraine which are providing support to survivors of gender-based violence, domestic violence in particular. And I've seen many women who have been in these situations. Usually these are women who, because of gender inequality in our countries, do not have access to good education, do not have access to good jobs, and therefore are earning much less than men. And therefore they have to stay in this situation. There is no way out for them from this situation. They have to stay in the families where they have been beaten. They have to stay in the families where they experience different other forms of gender-based violence, simply because there is no way out for them, because the society is not giving them other opportunities because of gender inequality. So that's my answer based on the experience.
I would say that if we really want to combat a crime, we need to dare to name it for what it is. The violence that women and girls are survivors of by men says it all. 1/3 of women have said that they're survivors of either physical or sexual violence. 50 women per week in Europe have been killed as a consequence of domestic violence. I think the figure speaks its own truth and its own reality. But if we really want to combat it, then we also need to dare to call it for what it is. And that's why it's important for me that we dare to say it is gender-based violence. It is violence against women and girls, because it's not individual cases, it's structural. As well as the violence against women and girls in the society, usually by men, is structural. Also, women's accessibility in decision-making places, for example, I don't think that it's a coincidence that we see a lack of women in many decision-making positions, even in our own union. That, for me, sends a very clear signal that something is wrong. We cannot teach our children and say to a female, your future would look like that you would have a bigger risk to be a survivor of violence, and you most probably will have much less chances to fulfill your dreams, to become prime minister, for example, to even become a member of the parliament, than when what we say to our boys. So in this context, I would say, with this background, I would say it's very important that we dare to call crimes for what they are.
And just one last sentence, because we are finishing. Just because men are not so much engaged in care work, in care of children and families, it's not about earning money, but really doing care work. And this is statistics shows that only 29% of men are really taking parental leave. So this is also an indicator that there is gender inequality, and it covers not only women but also men, because of prejudices, stereotypes, mindset, who they are, how they have to organize their lives. It is very deep inequality in our mind as well.
Dėkojame už klausimus. Spaudos konferencija.
Thank you for your question. This completes our press conference. Have a nice day.